Hi, I'm Marty Friedman. I'm really happy to be here doing this Hot Licks video for you. And today, one thing that we're going to really concentrate on is trying to be different as a guitarist. You really want to make yourself sound different. So I'm not just going to show you a bunch of solos and have you learn them and call it a day. I'm going to try to make you think a lot more, and I'm going to try to give you a lot of variations, and I'm going to show you how to figure out variations of your own. And I think that's the most important thing to do. So when you learn something, I think it's very important that you can think of 10 other ways to play it without just copying everything that you learn all the time. I think that's very important. So that's something I'm going to concentrate. Okay, I'm going to break this lesson up into 3 segments. The first segment, I'm going to give you some food for thought, where I'm going to give you like a whole bunch of unusual patterns to practice and a different way to get your mind geared for playing things that repeat. I'm going to show you some unusual patterns. And in the next section, I'm going to show you some exotic scales. Mainly, I'm going to focus on the Japanese sounding scale, which is quite different, and it can lend to some really pretty melodic playing. And in the last section, I'm going to talk about theory. I'm going to talk about constructing a solo nicely and playing, really thinking out every single note you play and following progressions and really making every note count instead of just playing the same old thing over a progression which has chord changes in it. Okay? So let's start by getting in tune, and I'll give you an A to tune to. All right? If you're in tune, let's get started. The first thing I want to do is start talking about odd times. Odd times as in repeating patterns. Like most patterns that guitarists learn are usually numbers of 3 and 4, like triplets or quadruplets. And I'm going to start dealing with the number 5 quite a bit in this lesson. I want you to start thinking in numbers other than 3 and 4, because everybody plays 3 and 4 all the time. So let's think of the number 5. And let's take a basic scale that most everybody knows, a pentatonic scale. It looks like this. Okay, now we're going to take that scale and play it 5 notes down at a time, like so. Okay, and we're going to play it going backwards 5 notes at a time, and quickly it will sound like this. Okay? That's what it looks like going quickly. And slowly, if you break it down, it looks like this. Okay, that's how the thing looks played slowly. And if you notice, it's just the same pattern going in that scale, 5 notes at a time, 5 notes here, 5 notes here, and so on. Now you can go back up the same scale using 5s, but using a different pattern, like this. Okay, that's also 5s, and slowly it's a different pattern, and it looks like this. Okay, that's the pattern that I just used playing that thing fast. Now what you can do is put these both together and look something like this. Okay, now that's just an exercise, but you can use that, and you can use that kind of thinking to play and improvising solos, and it's really nice to do repeating patterns that have odd numbers in it. So let's take this 5 pattern and make another odd number out of it, like 11. That means we're going to have to play 5 notes and then add 6 to it. So let's also make another variation at the same time. Let's make the 5-note pattern have a note higher than what we're using in the scale already. Now let's use A instead of G as the top note and use this as the 5 pattern. Okay, so let's add 6 notes to it, and let's use these as the 6 notes. You can have a repeating pattern like this. Okay, here's another 5 pattern that you can play quite fast, and it has an interesting picking and hammering on thing going on. It looks like this. Okay, this is something I use quite a bit when playing fast, and you can get it really fast if you want. You get it much faster than that, or slower. It sounds nice as well. So what it looks like is this. Slowly, that's the 5 right there. You pick the very first note, but every other time you don't pick the first note. You slide back to it like this. Let me go over that part right again, because it's important that you catch this about it. Slide back and then hammer on without picking right there. So you pick it, you hammer on and pull off, and then slide back and hammer on again. Now I'd like to do something else, and it's a way of picking an arpeggio. It looks like this. In the key of G, it would be here. Okay, that's quickly. It's a very basic 6-note arpeggio. And what we're going to do is play it slowly like this, and watch the picking, because picking is very important on this. You note there's 2 downstrokes and then a hammer-on. And then an upstroke. Downstroke, pull off. That's the pattern. Okay, that's G minor. Now, let's add a variation to it, which hopefully by now you're already thinking of trying to do. And let's do a variation of putting a basic pattern into that like this. Okay, let's add that to the arpeggio. But before we add that, let me show you exactly how to pick this. 2 downstrokes and an upstroke and a pull-off should do it for you. Okay, so let's put these 2 things together so we have a longer arpeggio pattern. That's what we're going to want, and together quickly it'll sound like this. This, obviously, you can move around anywhere you want. Okay, so that's what those 2 sound like together quickly. Now, what I'd like to do is change it to major, and that's very easy. All you do is you take the minor third, which in this case is B flat, move it to B natural, and do everything else the same, and you have G major. So what you have is this now. Okay, let's do some more variations on that. Okay, let's add the 7th of this and add it into the pattern here. So the 7th of G major is a F note. So where's an F note? There's the F note. Now let's find a way to add this into our arpeggio pattern that we have. Let's go like this. So far we have this. Let's add the 7th note and add an extra couple other notes that are in the arpeggio like this. So we are going to add 3 more notes to this pattern, and the new note is the 7th. So together we have this. Quickly it sounds like this. Okay, so what you can do is you can add these things on forever. I'll give you one more example, and then the rest I'll let you take it from there and hopefully come up with lots of different variations for yourself. Okay, why don't we make a variation by getting rid of a note as well and adding other notes. So let's get rid of one of the notes and add a whole bunch of others. Looks like this. And let's get rid of this note right there and just end here and go back up like this. So we're going to go like this slowly. Okay, all these notes, if you go by name, you have notes that are in a G7 arpeggio, except for the highest note, which is E, which is the 6th note in a G scale. So if you look at all the notes here, you have G, B, D, F right there, G again, B again, and this extra note, which is the 6th, which is E right there. All right, so together, our pattern, which is much longer now and has been revised many times, looks like this. Okay, so that's what you can do, and you can make variations forever. And that's the way you want to start thinking. Variations. Change that. Once you learn it this way, the way I just showed it to you, I want you to change that and come up with 3 or 4 other ways to do something similar. Okay, now let's make another variation on a picking pattern that I showed you before, and let's move it up into the key of C minor like this. I did a very basic picking pattern, but it's very important, especially when you're talking about playing quickly, is this pattern here with the 2 downstrokes and an upstroke. It looks like this. I did it before in G minor like this. Now let's just take this part of it and let's make some variations off that. Okay, quickly, it's like this. Okay, whenever you want to add an extra note to this thing like this, all you have to do is add a pull-off and an upstroke with your pick like this. However many times you want to add a note, all you have to do is have an upstroke with your pick and do a pull-off with your left hand. And it doesn't really matter where the note is, you're going to pick it the exact same way. So let's do a pattern like this, and this type of thing you can easily make variations from. Here's a simple pattern like this. Quickly, it looks like this. Slowly, it looks like this. Starting from the upstroke, but it's the same pattern. From that, you can make variations very easily. It's just a matter of how many notes you want to add into it. It's very simple. All you have to do is go. Okay, that's extreme about it, but you can add as many as you want or do less. It's just a matter of how many upstrokes you want to add in there and pull-offs. That's how you add to that. And that can become very fast. Okay, now let's do something, a pattern, a diminished pattern. A lot of guitarists use it, and there's a lot of different ways to do it than what have already been done. So let's do one like this. Let's take a pattern that looks like this. Something like that. Now that's a diminished pattern. It's got a lot of different little interesting ways to play, and there are all variations of just the scale, which would look like this. All I did was make variations, and it turned into what I just played. And what I'll do is I'll show it to you slowly, the pattern I just played, and take a look. Okay, at that point is where I move it back a fret and do the exact same thing. Okay, if you notice, I threw some 5s in there, right about here. This is a 5 pattern. Okay, that's what gives licks a certain role that I think is really cool. Here's another diminished thing that I just thought of that might be interesting. It looks like this. Okay, well, what you do with this is it's a diminished pattern, but it adds a little chromatic thing, which is a picking pattern that's very interesting. It looks like this. Okay, that's a picking thing. Looks like this if you look at the pick slowly. Okay, we're going to add that little picking thing into our diminished pattern, like this. Okay, the first one, we're going to, if you notice, the interval between my left-hand fingers is different, but only for the first time. Okay, and when you've gone down however many frets you want, but in this case I went down to the 3rd diminished below, you start it again. So you're here. And then start again with this. And then do it again. Okay, there's a ton of variations you can do with that. Let's do one like this. And so on. Now, if you note the variation that I did on this, it looks like this. I stretched all the way up here and added that top note with my little finger and used that as a variation. So before I even got into this stuff, I was already doing a variation before it. So it looked like this. And if you note that, that's the same picking pattern as this thing here. The 2 downs and the up business. So it looks like this. So in actuality, you could do this lick forever. In your pattern as a variation. You could do it twice. I did it once the first time. I went like this. I did it once. You could go like this. And so on. So what I'm generally doing, I'm throwing at you all these suggestions that you want to consciously be thinking of when you're practicing and doubly consciously be thinking of while you're improvising. So let's get back to this whole pattern. Let's make a long pattern. I'll show it to you slowly so you can get something to practice definitely, like this. So we'll start here. Okay, that'll be one time around, and then you'll start it here. And then the same exact thing here again. And quickly you have this. Like so. So that's the pattern. You want to practice it like that, and you also want to come up with other ways to play the same thing and add any note. Doesn't matter if it's in a scale, out of a scale, just add another note, make it another pattern that you want to practice also, just same way. Okay, now let's talk about some minor arpeggios and other ways to play them too, and variations on that. Now let's take a basic form like this to start off with. Looks like this. We're going to do A minor arpeggio, but we're going to add the second note in an A scale, which is B, and we're going to add it twice on the way up like this. There's your B, and the rest of the notes are C and E, which are in an A minor arpeggio. So we have this. Okay. Slowly we have this. Okay, I want to add some notes in there like this. Okay, now we added some notes that are not necessarily in the A minor scale, but they sound kind of nice in this pattern, and it's just a matter of choosing notes that you think sound neat. You know, don't really consciously think of, well, is it in this scale or is it in that scale? You know, when you're making variations, just choose anything and try it. So what I added here was an E flat, G flat. So I'll show you where I used all the new notes. Here's the pattern, slowly. Okay, and then coming down, I used the E flat here. E flat again right there. Okay, and now here I added another little pattern. So I ended with this G flat here, and back up the same way. Okay? Okay, now let's do a much longer variation on this A minor arpeggio. Now let's make it like this. Okay. Now all that is just the same notes that are in an A minor arpeggio, A, C, and E, and occasionally I added a B note like this. Only right there. The rest of the notes are only A, C, and E. Now, what that tells you is any kind of configuration that you can make A, C, and A, C, and E, that's an arpeggio, and anywhere that you could play that is fine. So all you have to do is find places to play those three notes and practice them, and you have your own arpeggio form. Okay, now let's take this one slowly and break it down and figure out the best way to play it. Okay, that's once around slowly. Okay, now, once you start getting a feel for these different forms, you can go in and out of them, you know, at random pretty much. You can get up to about here, and when you're here, circle this for a little while before you go and all that. So that means when you get to a certain spot like the middle, you can stay there for a while before you continue with the end of the arpeggio like so. Okay, that's how you make the variations in there. You play things a couple extra times, or you add a certain note. You know, it's just it's just variations. I can't stress that enough. That's where you're going to get the differences in your playing. You got to variate what you're doing. Now I'd like to start our next section, and where I'm going to concentrate on exotic sounding playing. Now it takes some exotic sounding scales, and phrasing mainly is what makes your playing really sound different, you know. So I'll show you a couple examples of different phrases and different scales. And here's a scale that I've used quite a bit, and I'll show you some patterns with that. And I call it your basic Japanese scale. Okay, this is the one that you immediately play and it sounds Japanese. And I think it's very nice. And these are the 5 notes in it. Okay, this one would be in the key of D minor, so that tells you that the root is on the A string right there. The notes in the scale are A, A sharp, D, E, and F. Okay, so anywhere you play only those 5 notes, you have this sounding scale. So let's start with a pattern, a quite difficult pattern at first, but once you get it, you should have a pretty good idea of how to make variations on this basic pattern. And the basic pattern obviously is this, and you could take that up an octave and go, and obviously here too. Okay, now let's make a big variation on this, and hopefully you can come up with some in between. Okay, that's a long variation, and pretty much covers the neck there. And what it is, it's a couple of different things, but it starts off with a pattern, and the pattern is made up of variations of that scale. So let me show you what that is slowly, and this will take some practice, but once you get it down, it's really quite nice. Okay, so that's the first pattern. obviously in practicing, you could practice that one alone before you get to the whole big long thing and get something like this. And the same thing goes for the octave next. So you can practice it there, and obviously the next octave up too. Okay, so you want to get just that basic pattern first before you move on and do the whole long thing, but I'll show you the whole long thing anyway. And a whole long thing going back and forth looks like this. You take this pattern all the way up. Now, when you get to this third octave, it's not the same as the other two because we have to come down. So let me show you how we approach this third octave. Okay, now I'll play it again even slower. Repeat the whole thing again from the beginning. Now this leaves you lots of room to do more variations. Now an easy place to do a variation would be, say, here when you're at this point. Okay, now you're sitting here with your first finger holding down, and all these fingers are free to do whatever they want to do. So you can make a variation of that pattern that we've already done a lot of times in this video with the 2 down strokes and an up. So you could add that in like this. It's really up to you. You just got to make lots of variations. First, practice it the way I showed it and then change it. Okay, now I'll take this Japanese scale that we're doing and adapt it to a 5 pattern, like the 5 pattern that we did in the pentatonic scale first. Now, the 5 pattern that we did before was this one. Now, let's use this Japanese scale and use a 5 pattern on that. Now, we're going to take it in the key of B minor. So, the root's going to be here on the A string, and let's start with that note and go like this. And so on. Now I'll play it fast first before I go into the whole thing, and this is a passage from the Sound Page song that I have called Go Off. Okay, and slowly we'll break it up into little sections of 5s like this. Sections of 5. Now that's just a scale played 5 notes at a time. You can do that with any scale at any time for improvising, and it's nice for worked out things too. Okay, so that's the Japanese scale played in 5. The next thing that I want to do to emphasize exotic playing is show you some different ways to bend notes, because I find in guitar playing there's a lot of bending, and a lot of guitarists bend very similar. And what I like to do is show you some different ways to bend. Now let's take a passage that would normally get bent like this. So the notes you're actually playing are D, E, and F, and then back to E and D. You're getting to the F from bending the E note a half step. Right? That's the normal way to do such a thing. Now, what I would do in that instance is never play it like that. I would always bend from the E flat note. Because that gives you a little bit more of a enunciated bend, and I think it's really important to bring out the bend. And it sounds a little bit different if you bend from a note that's probably out of your scale, like D sharp wouldn't be in your D minor scale where you might be playing this particular passage. Now coming down, you could go like this to complete the melody that we had first. We go. Now to bring it even more into the realms of true exoticness, we can go like this. Now by doing that, you're taking this note, which is E, and you're bending it a whole step, which if you're playing in D minor where you would normally be playing a line like, very common D minor sounding line, if you were to bend that, it'd be completely, out of key thing to do, but just do it for the sake of sounding exotic. And if you plan it and you make it sound nice, it's a good thing to do. So let's show the two ways to bend here. We got this. Okay, so that's something that you've got to just do all the time in your bending to get practice with. Okay, now what I also want to do is play a melody and play it straight, and then I'll play it, adding these exotic sounds to it so you can get an idea of how to change something normal into something kind of nice. So we have this. This would be the melody normally. Okay, that's the basic melody, and instead of playing it like that, let's kind of exaggerate it a little bit. Okay, if you notice, I took the melody and I just played it completely all weird and messed up. Now what I did is I bent from notes that are out of the scale, just bent from whatever note it took to get to the note that I wanted. Because I knew which note I wanted. So instead of, which would be kind of an obvious thing to do, I bent from a half step instead of a whole step. The complete opposite of what I said before. A half step bend there. And bending to this G note, I bent a half step there too. Now that's just examples. Now what you want to do is mainly take this one here into mind because that's a common phrase. Let's go like this for a change. Another thing that I like to do to make playing more interesting and to really communicate feeling into my playing is to pause and rush things and add extra notes. Now, what I say is like, take a normal melody and don't play it completely in time, just slow down some of the time, speed up some of the time, and really, pause. Now, let me give you an example of what pausing is. Taking the same melody that I used, for example, before, I'm going to go like this. That one, right? Okay, so if I were to pause in that, I could go. Okay, I'm playing the same melody, but I'm just kind of exaggerating. And I'm waiting a little bit. I'm not playing it in time. I'm just kind of letting the beat fall wherever it may. I'm just kind of pausing and digging into it really deep. Now, you can pause things and you can rush things the same way. You can go. And to rush things, sometimes it's nice to add an extra note like I just did. Now this E flat isn't in the original melody, so to say, but I added it in there and I rushed it along by going like, I added that note in there and I played it quick enough that it doesn't really sound out of key with the melody, it just kind of builds up to it a little bit. Okay, it looks like this. Okay, so what I did was I added a lot of notes, I paused, I rushed, I bent from notes out of the scale, I did everything all together. Now, those are all things that you want to consciously think about when you're improvising and when you're writing melodies. Consciously think of how you're going to, bend things differently than just playing the notes. It can be kind of boring if you're just playing the notes, Okay, so the next thing I want to do is go to the next section. And the next section is where I'm going to talk about what has to go through your mind as you're constructing a solo or playing a solo, improvising or working out one. This is something I was faced with, a progression. This is a typical thing that could happen to you in a studio. You'll be faced with a progression to solo over, and I'm going to explain the thought process, what has to go through your mind as you're soloing. Okay, I'm going to play this progression with the solo that I did, and then I'm going to explain what happened on every chord change and what I had to do to make it sound the particular way it sounds. So now let's take a listen to the solo that I'm talking about. Okay, that's the solo, that's the final product. Now, what I had to work with was a progression that looked like this. Okay, those are the chords. Real basic progression, and there's a lot of ways to look at this progression. A lot of guys would take the easy way out and just play in the key of D flat minor over the whole thing like this, and just play like a regular blues scale or a minor scale over it, which could be extremely boring. It could be cool, but I think myself, I think I'd like to take a much more deep approach. Even though the chord progression is very simple, you can spend a lot of time working it out and getting something nice with it. So let's take it measure by measure and look at what I did and look at this thought process here. Now, first thing I did was I took, on the first measure, what I played was this. Okay, those chords were D flat, A, and B. And I followed the D flat by starting on the note C, which you might think is kind of weird, but what I did was I bent it to D flat quick enough before you could say, man, he's sitting on a horrible note. But for the split second that I did sit on that horrible note, it certainly caught your ear because the chord is D flat, and I'm playing C like that, so you're thinking, wow, what's going on? For that split second, it catches your attention into the solo. And by the time you've heard that, you're already listening to something that sounds pleasant, bending it into the correct note, okay? So I bent it. Okay, that's just a melody straight in the D flat minor scale. And then when the chord changed to A, I went like this. Bending to the note G from F, which you'll recognize from my section before with the half step and whole step bends. Now G and E together over the chord of A make an A7 chord. So I followed the A like it was an A7. So I went. Now I'm bending to the note of F sharp from F. So while the B chord is playing, you're hearing F sharp, which is the fifth note in the B scale. So I'm following that B chord there like that. And then the next measure around looks like this. Okay, the first lick is something I like to call shock. You shock the progression like this. You know, I'm not following any chord with that. It's kind of a mindless sounding thing. It just jumps out at you. It's not following the D flat minor chord or anything. It's just a pattern that looks like this. And the whole concept of this is to land on your feet, and that's what I did in the next line like this, which is a D flat minor arpeggiated figure right there. So what I did was I kind of shocked the ear by playing this really mindless sounding thing. And I landed up on my feet, following the chord with a D flat minor arpeggio. Okay, and on the next chord, which is E and B, I did something like this. Now over the E, I followed it like it was a D flat minor. And what I did was I followed it that way because E and D flat minor are relative to each other, so you can generally use the scales of each in the other. So what I did was I pretended that I was playing over a D flat minor chord, and I relied on the flat fifth in the blues scale of that quite a bit, like this. The flat fifth being G. So I started on the E chord. When the E chord came in the progression, I started on the G note, and I did this. Okay, so that's how I followed the E chord. I followed it sort of like it was a D flat minor chord. Okay, and then when it came time for the B chord after it, I only used two notes, which is just A and the note of E flat bent to from D. So over the B chord, all I did was go. Now what you have there is A and E flat, which are the two main notes in a B7 chord, like this. Here's your E flat, there's your A. So I followed the B chord like it was a B7 chord. And the next line, I did like this. I totally changed the entire vibe of the whole thing. I said, I'm not going to play D flat minor oriented things anymore. I'm going to play this line, a D flat major sounding thing. Just totally changed the entire, the entire vibe of the whole thing by going like this. Kind of a Chinese sounding thing. And if you look at it closely, it's this figure. The only thing that makes it major is this note right there, F natural. Because if it were minor, it would have E in it. It would sound like this. It would have that sound to it. But I used the major note so I could change the sound of the whole solo. Okay, so that's how I followed that D flat chord. And then on the A chord that comes up next, all I did was play the note A and slide up an octave on the same note. I mean, there's nothing safer than that. Just playing the note, playing the octave of the note. Okay, that's a pretty safe way to follow that chord. And the next chord, which was B, I followed with an odd number pattern, a 7 pattern, like the odd numbers I was talking about before. There's 7 notes in that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's also a B7 kind of oriented run. Followed it, adding 2 notes that are not in the B7 arpeggio, which is this note, D flat, E. So it's a B7 arpeggio, adding 2 extra notes to it. Okay, so it looks like this. Okay, now the last measure of the progression is this. Okay, now this is something you also want to think about. It's like the end of the solo is coming up. You want to build it up. So you want to do something different from the rest. Not that the rest hasn't been all different from itself, but the end of this solo is got to be really different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a harmony for the first time in this solo here. And the lick that I'm going to use for this last measure is similar to an exercise that we did earlier in the video. It looks like this. That one. I used that, but this time I used it in the key of D flat minor because the chord that we're playing over is D flat minor, so I used this. And then I used another kind of mindless sounding lick to really catch your ear for the very end of the solo, which is just this. So that's how I followed the just completely random notes. They don't necessarily follow those chords. I just used something that's going to really, stand out. So I took a chance of playing completely out of key, and I liked the way it sounded, so I left the solo the way it was. Now, to harmonize that, I took the obvious harmony for an arpeggio, and the arpeggio being minor, D flat minor, I took the major relative chord, which would be E major, and I arpeggiated it the same way, using the same variations on that. So it looks like this. Here's D flat minor, and here's E major. That's the same arpeggio variations as I used in the D flat minor one, but moved up into the E major key. So it looks like this. And for the mindless part, I just harmonized it from where I was, the same fingering, same phrasing, everything. So that winds up being 3 frets higher than where the original line was, so you get kind of a minor third feel over that whole thing. And that's a pretty safe harmony, and not too outside, but the note choice is so weird that, you know, it comes out sounding pretty weird, and it builds up to the end of the solo nicely. So that's the thought process. That's what you got to think about all the time when you're improvising. You can't just play exercises, and you can't just, you know, just solo in one key and think that you're doing something different. You got to really think about every chord and make the best out of every chord, because it gives you a chance to show something different. You know, it gives you a really chance to play. So always follow as much as you can and really think it out, because if you take a little time, you can get something really nice. So that's generally what I want to say. Try to sound different. Try to really think. I think the main thing that you want to do is think, you know, because if you don't think and just let your fingers repeat exercises or repeat licks that you've learned, that's only half of what you got to do. It's a lot more than just dexterity. Being fast or being able to play clean is just, you know, it's just part of it. I think even more important than both of those things is to be able to play creatively and to be able to, you know, say something with your guitar. So what you have to do is really think all the time, and think like every note counts, because it does. So that's it for now, and thanks for looking at this video. I hope that you learn a lot from it.